Okay, I think it's about time we started adding some textures and some materials to various panels of our shoes. Now, if you recall, we did spend some time creating our UV maps, and we've got those pretty much where we want them as well. Now, for organizational purposes, I'm going to go ahead and add a folder to my shader tree here, and I'm just going to drop all of the materials here for the stitches into that folder. And I'm just going to put this folder near the bottom here, right about there, right under the base shader. That's fine, just to get them out of the way for now, because we're going to have a lot of materials in this list. So let's see. So the first thing I think I want to do is create a material for the shell. I always like to start with the larger parts first, but let's take a look at that. Let's go to item mode and just hold Shift H to hide everything except the shell. That cleans up our scene, and we're only looking at what we're working with. Okay, so now let's look. If I double click on the polygons of this, everything of that shell is selected. And I want to have a material for just the outer part of the sole. I want to have a material for this part, this little padding on the collar, and I want to have a different material for the inner part of the shell. And so anyway, how do I do that? Well, we could just meticulously go around here and drive ourselves crazy just selecting all the outer polygons, and that will take quite a while to do, and I just don't have that much patience. So the best thing is actually separate these parts into 3 separate polygon islands. In other words, self-connected islands. So we have to kind of disconnect these from each other temporarily. We can actually reconnect them back up later, but the best way to do that is to select an edge. For example, this edge here, double click on it, loop select it, select those 2 guys there, and that'll bring me around here. I'll double click on this guy, and that'll loop select the inside part of the top there, and then go over to this side here as well and just connect that. There we go. Now we have a nice loop that isolates this collar from the rest of it. And I'm going to go ahead and go over to, let's see, the edge toolbox here. I'm going to select the split feature and just leave it at 0 gap and click that. There we go. Now it did a couple of things. It tightened up this edge right here because it's no longer being pulled by this part of the geometry, by the major part of the shoe, because it's its own little island. At least the curvatures of the edges are not going to be influenced by this part of the shell. Okay, so we've got that done. So let's double click that. I'm just going to hide that for right now, the H key. Now let's see. We need to now separate the inside and the outside of the shell. And I can do that by going back to edges here. And let's see, where do I want to cut this guy at? I think maybe here, right there. And then along the bottom somewhere, it doesn't really matter. It's just, you're not going to see this part anyway. It's going to be hidden by the sole. And it looks like I have a little bit of a dent here, but that's probably underneath a panel. All right, so let's just do that and do the same thing here with the split feature. There we are. So now if I select this top part, it's the outer part of the shell, and that's all that gets selected. And the inner part of the shell, that's all that gets selected. Now it's okay that these are sharing the same UV space as long as they are independently selectable. So now I've got 3 parts, and let me just do an unhide here on the polygons. Remember, if you hide something in polygon mode, you have to be in polygon mode to unhide it. All right, I think that's pretty good. So now we've got that independent selection there, that one, and that one. Okay, so we've got all 3. And now I'm going to just go ahead and just start making materials. I'll hit the M key, and we'll call this collar padding. Go OK. There we go. And you'll notice we have a material and we have a material mask. A lot of times as I'm creating my materials, I like to hide them when they're done. I like to hide the polygons because that just makes it easier to select the others and kind of helps me keep track of what materials I've already created. So we'll call this M for material. We'll call this shell inner and hide that. Now that one, material shell outer. There we are. Okay, so that is step 1. Now let's go back to unhide everything and we'll move on to step 2.